Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Moments. My name is Linda Golik. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Consultant at Bellin Health, and I am joined with Charles LaTorre, who is our behavior health therapist, who has been just such a great treasure for all of us. We've learned so much from you, Charles, in the time we've been together. So happy 2021.
Happy 2021 to you.
So, Charles, you were so kind. You sent me a really meaningful Christmas gift, and this has been such a treasure to go through. And I've actually read it like 3 times because every time I read it, I think I get a little bit more out of it. So the book is called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And ironically, for 2021, what we really wanted to do with Mental Health Moments was we wanted to tie it to our Lifesaver Wellbeing series and the topics that we're going to be covering. And our topic for January is social connectedness and just how important that is. And this book really ties beautifully into that. So, Charles, can you start out by telling us a little bit more about the book and why it's been so inspiring for you and why you decided to be so kind and share it with me?
Well, yeah, a couple things. First of all, it surprised me. I knew of it and I had seen it. You know, I go to bookstores, you see it in a bookstore, and it intrigued me. I saw the cover, but I thought, it's a children's book, maybe. I didn't buy it, didn't read it, passed by it again. And then I saw that it was Barnes & Noble's #1 book of the year. And it was also a kind of a Barnes & Noble counterpart in England. It was Waterstone. It was also Waterstone's #1 book of the year. So I thought, I better take a look at this. This makes it even more intriguing. I read it and then found out even more, like, this is not a children's book. This is a book for everybody. And the author even says at the beginning, this is anybody from 88 to 8 or something like that, that you could be doing this at any age. But then I had read one of the reviews after it, and I think it was a CEO of a company, and he bought it for his entire staff. He was that touched by it. And I thought, after I read it, I had seen over time a lot of and then when I saw our topic of connectedness, I'm like, we got to talk about this. The book has been such a worldwide phenomenon. It's had, I think, close to 500,000 copies sold. It's been translated into umpteen different languages. And almost anytime you get something like this, you read it, you want to pass it on to somebody else. You want other people. What people have described in reading it, and I had the same feeling, was one of my favorite comments of it was like having the feeling of smelling warm baked cookies and having a hug and through reading something. And I thought, what a great way to describe what this is all about and the feeling of connection and what we've been through in the last year, which brought us all together anyway, thanks to you, Linda, with the idea of the mental health moments, is I couldn't think of a better way to kick off the year, especially when this was the Lifesaver message of the month. So as a result, with this phenomenon, and the last thing I'll say about it is how interesting this even has become. It started as an Instagram message to people just dealing with things, and the artwork was so incredible. Editors started asking this guy to make a book out of it. And his reaction was, I'm not an author, I'm not a writer, but it just morphed into this thing that has now become this worldwide phenomenon, to the point that you really couldn't even get it through the holidays. Barnes & Noble was sold out through the entire state, and then even beyond most of the region. Amazon, in all of the Amazon world, you could not buy this book for a 3 to 4 week window of time, which is just an indicator of how successful it's been. And even then, there's one article that said all the extra drivers they had to add to their supply chain and delivery just to get the supply and demand met. So it's really been an interesting thing. And I hope as we talk through it, if anybody on the line has read it, that they can chime in some observations as well, and any thoughts they had going through it. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the book as a whole.
Perfect. So what we thought we would do today is that we would give you some of the highlights of the book, so we'd explain some of the concepts in the book. And what's beautiful about this book is that if you read one page or if you read all of it, there's just lessons woven throughout. So I think today you'll get some really great solid information that you can carry forward, even if you don't necessarily get your hands on the full book. So one of our very first favorites out of the book was this little boy talking to this mole. And he says to the mole, "What do you think success is?" And the mole says, "To love." And what a very powerful lesson for us to think about, right?
Yeah, for me that was the hook. Like when I was looking at it, and again, I was skeptical. I mean, I've had it with, people, have you read this? You should read it, number one, all this stuff. And I had the book, I'm like, I'll look at it, and not much, but I loved the art as soon as I saw it. I loved the cover. The page before this, the question is asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the answer was kind. And I thought, wow, that's really different. Usually we have a occupation in mind to answer that question. So my first thought was, wow, this is different. This is a little twist, right? Then the next page is, what do you think success is? To love. And then I'm like, okay, I'm definitely hooked now. This is different. We think of work and success, but if what we want to be is kind and to be able to love, I mean, that starts us off on a totally different plane. And that's what immediately hooked me in. And then I'm like, well, I can't wait to see where this goes. So that was and by the way Linda set these up, it's kind of chronologically. But if there is one criticism of the book that some people have in reviews, is that it isn't this necessarily straightforward, linear start and finish. It's more of like a series of profound wisdom, but in a very simple way. And just these pieces of wisdom, quiet musings and conversations that take place, rather than this story that starts, reaches a crescendo of conflict or something, and then resolves itself later on. It's not like that at all. It's just a series of musings, wisdom, profound things, and sometimes utterly simplistic ways that I think is part of what has made it so impactful. So this is a start in what hooks you. So I don't know if you had another take at the beginning of Linda and your reaction to it. And I also see Mary Lou has joined in, so she may chime in as well. Hi, Mary Lou.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, I think my impression of it was I loved how simplistic it was, but yet how powerful it was, and how it put some of the key things that I think we should all focus on right at the center. Things like love and kindness and asking for help. Those are all really amazing messages that maybe we hear in other ways, but to see it in these simple illustrations, I think was just incredibly powerful. So the next image that we wanted to share with you that really spoke to us, most of the old moles I know wish they had listened to their fears less and more to their dreams. So this is a conversation between the boy and the mole. And this really spoke to me because I often think about, if we get to the end of our lives, what will we regret and what will we wish that we had done more of? And I can see where if I was told tomorrow that I was going to leave this earth, that I would maybe wish I had done something differently. So this really spoke to me. What about you guys?
Yeah, Mary Lou, you want to chime in first?
Absolutely. I think that I'm probably an old mole, and I've taken my book. You can see my book here, and I have all my little Post-its marking all the pages that I love, and this was one of them. Overall, the book, like you guys have already talked about, is very well illustrated. It really is a lot of the messages that we've heard, but it puts a really neat reframe around all of those messages in a very positive light. So this one spoke to me as well, as kind of an old mole myself, knowing that I do want to make a mark in the world, and I want to worry less about fears and dream more about what I've got ahead of me.
Yeah, and I think part along the way of the mental health moments, we have talked about, even back to the Kelly McGonigal video during the summer, the idea that when we're chasing what matters to us rather than fearful of what may happen instead, we are in a psychologically better place. So I thought the illustrations is the other amazing thing that really hooked me with the book. And this particular phrase was one of my favorites. I describe it as if we all get to live to be 90 and beyond, and we're sitting on a grand porch on a rocking chair, we will appreciate more what we did, and hopefully very few regrets along the way. And our fears, I think, as I talk to people all along, their fears promote their distress, but their dreams promote what they're going towards. So when we're going towards something, we're living a healthier, happier life. And when we're pursuing dreams, that's the key. So there's one phrase that I like, which is if your dreams aren't big enough to scare you, you're not dreaming big enough. So we want to be able to follow our dreams and be less attuned to our fears. So that's one of the reasons I love this slide.
Love that. Love that. Perfect. All right. The next illustration that we really enjoyed is, isn't it odd? We can only see our outside, but nearly everything happens inside. And I thought, really, with everything we've worked on since we've been doing this series, that's exactly what we've been working on. We've been working on the inside. And yet our world just really pays so much attention to the outside.
Yeah, and to me, this was one of my favorite ones. And I had that feeling a lot of the way through, like, well, this is probably going to be my favorite. Then there'd be something else that would then jump that. But to me, and part of what I talk about a lot is our inside world runs everything. And I've used the phrase before, our brain is our superpower. But when you think about it, it's the one part of our body that we can't see it. It's never seen the light of day. It's encased in this skull of ours, has never seen the light of day, yet it is the only mechanism with which guides us to enter into the outside world. So all of the world that we have happens internally, but it's lived externally. And I thought this was like the perfect quote to sum that up, that everything happens on the outside really takes place on the inside before it ever even gets out there. So that's one of the reasons I was drawn to this particular quote.
This one jumped out to me as well, if I may. It's a very it's a very simple sentence. You know, it's odd. We can only see our outsides, but nearly everything happens on the inside. And to me, it conjured up thoughts of our adolescents who struggle with social media. They struggle with that like button out there on the social media, and what's projected out to others isn't what's happening on the inside. You know, as a clinician, I think you folks have heard me talk about, I used to work with kids. I did a lot of clinical work with adolescents. And as Charles said at the beginning of the conversation today, this is a book that's for kids between the ages of 8 to 80. And this one really spoke to me when I think about our youth. And how much they struggle with what they project on the outside and what they might be feeling on the inside.
Totally agree, Mary Lou. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, our next one is really surrounding that theme of kindness. And we see this throughout the book, but this is one of the most significant ones. Being kind to yourself is one of the greatest kindnesses for the mole. The mole is so wise, right? So that idea of self-compassion and being kind to ourselves, so powerful.
Yeah, well, what most jumped out to me on this one is it is a parallel to the theme of self-compassion, which we're not good at. I mean, all of what we know in science, and a researcher at UT Austin named Kristen Neff has dedicated her life to understanding kindness to self and self-compassion and how we don't do it. We are not necessarily good at what this greatest kindness is, or one of the greatest kindness. So I think anytime we're able to highlight this for ourselves, and this image, I think to me stood out so much that we don't have this kindness innately. And secondly, even if we do, it's taught out of us. And what I mean by that is we live this thing of get better, be your best, do your best. And anytime we're not, we feel like we have failed. We've let ourselves down, we let our parents down, we let our teachers down, we let coworkers down. We've become so self-deprecating a society, so self-critical. We see our flaws more than anybody else sees our flaws. We've become a society of our own worst enemy. And to have the best mental health possible, we have to be able to have more self-kindness rather than self-criticism. And that the studies tell us that if we can have more self-compassion, we think the more we beat ourselves up, the better our results will be. But we found it to be the opposite. The more we beat ourselves up, the less we're resilient, the less we come back, and our results get worse. So if we could practice one of this greatest kindness of being kind to ourselves, we are going in a more virtuous direction in life. So Mary Lou, if you want to join in on this slide as well.
Absolutely, and I showed you guys all my earmarked and post-it marked pages in the book, and the last picture and image we looked at in this one were two that I marked back to back. They're not right next to each other in the book, but the idea of not always projecting on the outside what we feel on the inside. This connects to that, I think, being kind to yourself. It comes in from inside, and to Charles's point, we're not always good at that. We tend to put on that face that we think others want to see, or that we think is the brave face, and it's not always the kindest face that we give to ourselves, or the way we look at ourselves.
So along with that, then, that really ties into kind of the next, there's really three illustrations that go together. The horse then is introduced to the book, and they start talking to the horse. And the boy asks the horse, "What is the bravest thing you've ever said?" asked the boy. "Help," said the horse. So going along with that kindness theme of being kind to ourselves, sometimes we really need to ask for help.
Yeah, and even I think with this one, because this is more of a series, if we could even do the next two with it, and then we can have some dialogue about it. I think this theme of help is captured in these three in a row. So help, said the horse, is the bravest thing. If we look at the next one, When have you been your strongest? When I've been dared to show my weakness, said the horse. And then the next one, I think, brings this whole theme together, because asking for help isn't giving up, it's refusing to give up. So I get this every time someone walks in my door, and I think Mary Lou has had a career of this as well. So many people feel that I was afraid to ask for help. I was afraid to reach out. This is one of the, in any of the things you look at from this book, this is one of the strongest messages in that connection. Who do I connect with? Who do I get help from? Who do I give help to? And this is that, because so many people see if I ask for help, that means I've given up. But this means we're never going to give up. We are refusing to give up if we ask for help. And it's interesting that the strongest member physically of the group is the horse, and it's the horse that was able to be most vulnerable in the story. So Brene Brown has made a living talking about vulnerability and how our weakness is actually our strength, if we can look at it that way, but refusing to give up. And this particular reference in the book has become a staple in schools, hospitals, even prisons, that this is put up everywhere and internationally has become one of the symbols to be able to encourage people. Don't think asking for help is a sign of weakness. It might be the bravest thing you've ever done. So that's what I've loved about it. And this has resonated almost universally. So Mary Lou, you have any thoughts on this one as well?
Yeah, I think about kind of the, I think about the place where these three pages are in the book, and they're right in the middle of the book. It's almost like the book hits kind of a crescendo at this point, and the horse is introduced, and it's very vulnerable, to your point, Charles, as you said, and yes, almost the contradiction of the largest of the characters, the largest of the animals, to the little boy and the little mole. Is the most vulnerable. I heard this all the time in my practice. It was hard for me to come in here. I didn't want to come. Somebody else made me come. I feel weak coming and asking for help or having to talk to somebody. And you know, it was one of the. I would always view it as a victory, if you will, if I could have a patient come back and have them say this felt okay. It felt okay to ask for help, and I'm not weak. I'm strong for asking for help, and that's a pretty powerful message.
Well, and I think it really ties well into our well-being topic too, with the idea of social connectedness. Social connectedness is all about being connected to others, and so having those connections, that we have places where we know we can go for help, and that there are people that are going to help us through. And I always think nobody does this life by themselves. Nobody gets through this life alone. We do need others, and you know, we can't know everything, so it is important to know that we can ask for help. That's a big victory. So the next quote, the next page, this was really one of my favorites. This spoke to me on two levels. The mole is obsessed with cake. A theme that you'll see throughout the book if you read it is that this mole is obsessed with cake, which really spoke to me because I too love baked goods. What can I say? I'm in wellness for a reason. But then, like he says in this book, also, I feel like it was just written for me. I have discovered something better than cake. No, you haven't, said the boy. I have, replied the mole. What is it? A hug. It lasts longer. And I love this because I love hugs. I'm very much a huggy person. I hug my husband several times a day. To get that, and it's so important. It is so important for our emotional and physical health, isn't it?
Absolutely. Mary Lou, before I go into it, you want to address this one first?
Sure. Well, I just have to laugh because I called myself an old mole at the beginning of this. I'm also a cake lover, so I guess I guess I align well with the mole on many levels. But I think this speaks to what you were talking about as well, Linda, a little earlier, and just the importance of social connectedness. Cake lasts a short little time, but a hug or that social connectedness or being able to connect with others is something that lasts much longer, for sure.
Yeah, to me, this was also one of my favorite ones. And I guess in the realm of full disclosure, Mary Lou and I know each other a long time, and she knows this about me as well, is I eat generally pretty healthy, but if I do have anything, it's a little bit of a dessert of love. And I guess that was part of growing up Italian. You had to end every meal with either a little cookie or a slice of cake. So I can appreciate as you said it, Linda, the baked goods element of it. So I love this slide. And to me, it was this element of we are in our society. And I think one of the most amazing thing about this whole book, as I'm saying it, is it's what it's capturing, what's going on, and how we can look differently. We are an instant gratification. What's good now? Give me what's going to happen. What's going to fix this? What's going to make me feel better in the instant? In our instant gratification orientation, we sometimes miss the fact that for so many people, what lies beyond that? What does the hug do? The healing element of it, that instant gratification usually is a quick fix, but it usually doesn't change anything. The hug is deeper. The hug isn't as instantaneous, and it's more meaningful. Someone told me yesterday, we were talking about outlook for 2021, and what they said was, I can't wait to hug a family member again. And this is somebody who is a baked goods fan. She brings baked goods, bakes every family birthday cake and everything. And she said, I can't wait to see people without a mask again and to give a hug again and to experience that freedom again. So it's really this instant gratification versus the internal. And I think another one of those examples of the internal world versus the external world. And we've talked throughout the program last year of oxytocin and the connection. And I think this one speaks to that in such a profound way.
Absolutely. And it is challenging to not be able to hug everyone you want to hug. Absolutely. I was a very instinctual hugger. I hugged coworkers and friends, and so I too look forward to getting back to that. So we will get there. We will get there. All right, our next graphic is another one surrounding kindness. Nothing beats kindness, said the horse. It sits quietly beyond all things. Nothing beats kindness.
Well, I'm definitely going to defer to Mary Lou first on this one because she is so kind and wonderful a human being. And even the other day had a Be Kind face mask on. So if anybody could speak to kindness, do you even have it? See that? At least you know I'm not making this up. So Mary Lou, if you want to dive in first on this one, go for it.
Thanks, Charles. You're too kind. You know what? This was another one that I post-it marked in my book, and it's been well loved and earmarked as well. What strikes me about this one, though, really is the illustration. I mean, if you really look at that illustration, you know, the mole and the little boy sitting on the back of the horse, kind of staring off into the wild, which is referred to elsewhere in the book. They talk about the wild being scary and the wild being unknown, but not to be afraid of you know, what's unknown or uncomfortable. what speaks to me though, and this is really the illustration, and I can almost envision myself kind of sitting there, kind of looking beyond all things to what is kind out there, and taking the time to kind of take it in, just as this illustration depicts. That's what jumped out to me, specifically in the illustration, along with the words on this page.
Yeah, I mean, I have very similar thoughts. The illustration of some of these, and this was one that was even more profound than what was written. But I have this one T-shirt. It says "Believe in kindness," but the "be" and the "kind" are highlighted, and I think the ability to believe that we can still be kind to one another. Being kind can bring out the best in each other. And, as Marilou pointed out, the kindness is a running theme through this. Self-kindness, kindness to others. This started out as a boy who was lonely, but met 3 other very lonely but kind people, and they came together as formed a team, basically, of getting through the horrors and the beauty of life, which they called the wild. So there's the beauty and there's the difficulty in it. But in this day and age, it's sometimes hard to be kind. And when we're so challenged and everybody has a challenge that they are dealing with, what we know scientifically is when we feel most challenged, kindness kind of goes by the wayside, including, as I said before, to ourselves. But when we can become more intentional about how we treat others and not just totally focused on this and something else, we become even more kind. It becomes, when we give more, we get more, and it becomes virtuous. It spreads, and that's ultimately, if we were all doing that more, I think our world would be just a little bit better a place to live in.
And that's really what I was thinking with this illustration too, is that it is such a powerful, powerful thing to be kind, and it is contagious. And so the more we can do it, the more the people around us will get it, and we can spread that bigger and bigger and bigger. But it does, look in the mirror. It needs to start with us, right? It's a good place to start. All right, our next one, another great quote by the horse, is sometimes, said the horse, sometimes what, asked the boy. Sometimes just getting up and carrying on is brave and magnificent. And this one I had marked specifically because reflecting upon 2020 and everything we've encountered, and again, in terms of self-compassion and being kind to ourselves, how magnificent that we have just kept going. We need to give ourselves credit.
Yeah, for me, this was one of my totally earmarked ones. Part of what the whole theme of resilience has been, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, if you get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. Every time we get up and carry on, it's bravery and it's magnificence carried out. That is what I think is the theme about resilience. And even with that, we not just feel we got knocked down and got up, but we are even braver and getting braver. Do we keep growing in that? And that was part of the theme of 2020, keep growing through the adversity rather than getting beat up by the adversity or just getting through it. So to me, this is the storms of life always happen. What it's about is the growth through it, still finding a way to be the best version of us, but see it as magnificent. That each day I get to go and do that. It's not only a blessing, but it's magnificent that I get to do it. So, Marilou, curious for you too, what this one meant to you.
I think you both have summed it up really, really well. Sometimes it is just taking that first step and letting the next step follow. And that in and of itself is brave and magnificent. And sometimes being kind enough to yourself just to let those first few steps happen again, the theme of kindness and compassion towards ourselves is a part of this, for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, our next one is the boy sitting again with the mole, and he asks, "What is the greatest illusion?" asked the boy. And the mole answered that life should be perfect. What an illusion. And I don't think our mothers ever told us that life was going to be perfect, and yet we sometimes get caught up in that it's going to be. And I think when we come to a place of peace that it isn't perfect, we can start to see the beauty behind all the imperfections.
Well, Mary Lou, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, well, this is the one, I think I'm remembering correctly. I'm looking back in my book. I think this is the one where the author talks about this imperfect illustration is one that his dog walked across. Am I remembering that correctly, guys? Yeah.
Yes, you are.
And it just made me chuckle because it really, quite frankly, kind of hit me between the eyes when I looked at it and realized he kept an imperfect picture in this book, and it happened at such a perfect time as he was illustrating the book that life should be perfect. I don't know where we got that thought, and it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I love that. And in the narration of it, he talked about that. How metaphorical or ironic could that be? That is, I'm talking about perfection, and I have this piece of art as I'm drawing it on the floor. My dog walks across it and makes a stain. And I set my coffee cup down and I ruin it, but did I really ruin it? No, it's just not perfection. And we have this pursuit of perfection, right? We live, to me, the reason this resonated so much for me, particularly this part, is because people will tell me this all the time. I'll give you an example. We went on this vacation, me and my friend, or we had this weekend. We posted these Instagram pictures. Everyone was great. We had this great smile. We had this great background. We had this great everything. We hated it. We fought, we argued, we did this, we did that. It was miserable. But we are becoming, and if not become, this society of, I call it the social media keeping up with the Kardashians or whoever else it is. We have to look like there's this external perfect image of us to the world, and everything that people see about us is now posted for hundreds of thousands of people to see how great my life is. And we know no one's life is perfect, and no one's life is 100% ever going to be. We live, but the irony of this is, if you ever ask anybody, no one will say they're perfect, right? I'm the one who's perfect. We all will say that we're not perfect, but we are always striving for that perfect everything, and that's the illusion. The illusion is that we're not perfect, and we live in an imperfect world, but we're all trying to be our best. And I think that's what we can hope for. And if we're going for that, that's a healthier perspective than perfection. So, and even if we have that perfectionistic streak, because I know so many people who do, and we look at it as, even if that's there, you can always try to pursue that, but accept the progress in the meantime, accepting progress and keep getting better, even if it's on the road to this illusory concept. So I thought this was unbelievably great.
Awesome. All right, our next one is, what is your best discovery? Asked the mole. That I'm enough as I am, said the boy. And what I thought about when I read this one was, if we could teach our children, very young on, and give them this resilience of, you're enough just as you are, what we could grow them into. But it's just such a great lesson for all of us to know that you're enough, no matter who you are or what you're doing. You are enough. You bring value because you are here as a human being.
Yeah, to me, one of the greatest things of the whole book is the notion of I am enough as I am. And we live in a society that sometimes we don't agree with that. That doesn't mean we can't get better, but as I am today, if I can be happy with this, still on a pathway of growth, this is great. And this is the issue with feedback. What people tell me all the time is, whether it's leaders, teachers, parents, this concept of an open mindset, that I can always be better, but I have to be good with who I am today, is we are people who are always at the crossroads of two things. The idea that we always want to learn, grow, and get better, but we want to be loved for who we are right now. And every day, that's a parenting tightrope to walk. Whenever we're giving anybody feedback of how they could get better, it's we're tugging at one internal instinctive urge of getting better, but also being loved for who I am right now. And this, I think speaks to that, this very picture and the illustration. And I think the better we could accept that on our pathway, the happier and healthier we are as well. So, Mary Lou, you have thoughts on this one too?
Yeah. Again, when Linda introduced the topic today for our talk, she talked about these drawings being kind of chronological order through the book, and here we can see the little boy kind of learning really a fantastic lesson. I'm enough as I am, and he's learned that lesson from, the wise old mole and the strong horse and just the quiet, silent fox that accompanies him. It's so important, the social connectedness and how we learn from each other as well.
I love, Mary Lou, that you mentioned the quiet fox, because I think that alone speaks kind of a lesson through the book, that there's this character that never says anything, but he's there for companionship, and he's along as a friend. And I think that, if you're that type of person, that you're maybe a little bit more quiet, but you're always someone that can be counted on, that's really an important role as well. All right, we just have a few more left here. So the next one is, what do we do when our hearts hurt, asked the boy. And the answer is, we wrap them in love with friendship, shared tears and time, till they wake hopeful and happy again. That's a big one. What do we do?
Well, this one was my favorite all the way around. And I'll tell you the truth. The other day, I was talking to Mary Lou quickly in her office, and I had listened to this first on an audio book, and he narrates it. And when I heard this one, it was like, this one stopped me in my tracks. I said, Mary Lou, you got to hear this. I absolutely loved it. This to me, as much as anything else of what we talked about today, speaks to our theme of connectedness. When we hurt the most, we need the people around us who love us the most. And when I saw the phrase, wrap them in love and with friendship, and the tears that we can share together rather than that we have to do alone, to me, nothing spoke more to both the optimism that we can all get through this together, that none of us are stronger than all of us. The more we have, our heart wants the people nearest and dearest to us. And when we can be that with it for each other, nothing is more important in our connectedness. So, Mary Lou, any afterthoughts for you?
No, only, Charles, that I thank you for sharing the audio version of this, which I hadn't done. I read the book. I shared with Charles. I read it on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee and really wanted to take time to absorb it. But the audio version of this, if we could get all 70 of the participants on this call to pick the book up and to listen to the audible, I think we'll find ourselves wrapped in a lot of love and friendship in a shared way.
Beautiful. All right, we have just a couple more. So our next one is, always remember you matter, you're important, you are loved, and you bring to this world things that no one can. I think that's so precious to think about, that each one of us is so unique and so special and so different from the next person. And that's a wonderful, wonderful gift. And if we can remember that, that can really help us, you know, even through times of trial and tribulation, to just remember that you're loved and you bring something fabulous to this world.
Well, I think for me, this one is, I'll keep my remarks shorter because I see we're running short on time, but this one, and just tying in one part that I wanted to say with what you referenced a little bit, Linda, this to me is the fox, that everybody is unique in what they add in their own way. And no one is like you. No one adds the uniqueness to the world. And that when we can see ourselves for who we are, rather than who we compare ourselves to, we are in a better place. And I think this is one of the central themes throughout this, in this particular illustration, and the wording captures that, but it's a running theme throughout. This one just brings it all home.
Great. So our final one, and I think all of us found this one as a favorite. It's something that just wraps this up so beautifully. So sometimes all you hear about is the hate, but there is more love in this world than you could possibly imagine. I think that quote really, really speaks well.
I love it. I totally love it. There's a couple things I want to say about it, and then some summary items. So before I jump into that, Mary Lou, you want to cover this one?
I think this is a fantastic way to end the mental health moment today, along with, you know, what Charles is going to summarize for us. But really, this is what it's all about. And I think certainly we've heard in the media, in the news, you know, just everywhere we turn, hate and anger and misinformation, and to push that aside and realize that there's so much more that is out there. Is challenging sometimes, but again, I talked about the reframe, and this was something that really was reframed well in the book. You know, that there's so much more love in the world than what we see sometimes.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's ever been a time that we need to see this more than we have. So I think the themes of this sum up this whole thing of love, hope, friendship, and courage, and of asking for help resonate deeply at a time where mental health can't be taken for granted and kindness sometimes seems out of reach. So if we could, although there's sometimes simplistic, they're profound in their own way, if we could think of this from that vantage point, love versus hate, we all matter. If we have the courage to keep going through the storms of life with kindness, with vigor, with resilience, we are, and the last thing I wanted to say is be kind to yourself and not lose sight of what is true and what is important and beautiful in our lives and the love within it. And that's the note that I wanted to end on. So, Linda, if you have any final comments, we'll wrap it up.
Well, I want to thank you, Charles and Mary Lou, for taking the time and sharing those messages with us today. I think we all continue to look for those little tidbits to help us continue to improve and grow with everything that we've experienced. And I just can't thank you enough for being here. And especially to our people that are tuning in to these segments, thank you so much. We will be sending out this PowerPoint, so you'll have that for your own reference. You may want to order the book if you were inspired by this. But with that, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. But otherwise, we will wrap up today. And again, thank you to all of you for joining us today. Have a great rest of the day.